Tajiri had never been this romantic before. It was their anniversary, and he surprised Okello with a candlelit dinner right in their living room. Soft music played in the background. The lights were low, and the table was beautifully set. Her favorite dish, her favorite wine. He pulled out a chair for her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Something about him felt strange. His hands trembled just a little when he poured her drink. He kept looking at the glass, then at her, then quickly looking away. Okello watched quietly, her heart calm, but her mind alert. When he stood up to get something from the kitchen, she saw it, clear as daylight. He pulled a small bottle from his pocket, poured something into her wine glass, stirred it slightly with his finger, then looked around to make sure she hadn't seen. But she had. Every movement, every lie. She didn't flinch, didn't speak, just smiled gently as he returned and handed her the poisoned glass. While he looked away for a second, she calmly switched the glasses. Her heart beat a little faster, but her face stayed soft. She raised the glass, not hers, and said sweetly, "To us." They sat across from each other, candlelight flickering between them. Tajiri raised his glass, the one he had meant for Okello, and smiled like nothing was wrong. "To love," he said smoothly, locking eyes with her. Okello lifted her glass too, the one he had poured for himself. Her hands were steady, her face was calm. She gently clinked her glass against his and whispered, "To truth." Then she brought it to her lips, but only let the wine touch her mouth. Not a drop went down her throat. Tajiri, on the other hand, took a full sip, then another, confident, relaxed, like he had just solved a great problem and couldn't wait for it all to be over. Okello watched him silently, studying every twitch in his face, every breath he took. Minutes passed. The room stayed quiet except for the soft music and the clinking of cutlery. But then, something shifted. He wiped his forehead. Again, then again. His eyes darted around the room. His breathing grew heavier. His hands, once so confident, started trembling. He tried to speak, but his lips were dry. He reached for his water, missed the glass slightly, then caught it. I don't feel so good," he muttered, blinking fast. Okello leaned forward, her voice soft and steady, her eyes cold like the night air outside. "Neither did I, when you cheated. But I survived." Tajiri's eyes widened. He tried to stand, but his knees buckled. He gripped the table to steady himself, panic all over his face now. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Only pain, only fear. She sat still, watching him slowly crumble, not with joy, not with hate, but with the calm of a woman who had been broken once and had stitched herself back together, stronger, smarter, and more dangerous. "You really thought I didn't know?" she said quietly, almost like she was talking to herself. "You thought you could poison me and walk away clean?" Tajiri sank into his chair, sweat soaking through his shirt. His lips turned pale, his breathing was shallow. And Okello. She stood up slowly, picked up her phone, and made a call. "Hello? Yes. Emergency. My husband just collapsed during dinner. Please come quickly." Then she looked at him one last time and said gently, "You tried to kill me with poison, but it was your lies that killed everything long ago." It all started a few weeks before the dinner. Okello had been cleaning the bedroom one quiet morning when she found Tajiri's second phone hidden beneath a pile of clothes. Something in her heart told her not to ignore it this time. Her hands shook slightly as she unlocked it. He had used the same password he always did. Her birthday, ironically. The moment the screen lit up, her world shifted. There were hundreds of messages, not from friends, not from business partners, but from a woman named Kendi, a woman Okello had never heard of, yet who spoke about her like she was already dead. The texts were cruel, calculated, and cold. "Once she's out of the picture, it's just you and me. She'll never see it coming. You're too smooth. You deserve all her wealth, baby. She's boring. I'm the real prize." Okello read them all. Every filthy plan, every insult, every lie they had whispered behind her back. One message made her breath stop. "Poison is clean. Just one sip, then we sell the land and run." She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't even confront him. Her heart was breaking, but her face stayed calm. Instead, she quietly packed a small bag, tied her scarf around her head, and left the house. She walked for miles, past the noise of Mwaga town, through the red, dusty roads that led to the old village of Nyonko, to one person she trusted more than anyone else, Mirembe, the village herbalist. Mirembe was old, wise, and calm like the river. She saw Okello's face and knew something was wrong even before she spoke. They sat under the big mango tree as Okello handed her the phone. her eyes heavy with quiet pain. Mirembe read in silence, then looked up slowly. "Child," she said softly, "sometimes snakes must be allowed to slither until they tie their own necks." Okello stared at her, unsure what she meant. But Mirembe continued, "Don't rush. Don't fight anger with anger. Let the darkness show itself fully. Let him think you are blind. That is when he will fall." That day, something inside Okello changed. She didn't return to the house with tears. She returned with a plan. She smiled more, cooked his favorite meals, acted like nothing was wrong. But her eyes had seen enough. Every kiss from him now felt like poison. Every "I love you" like a dagger in her back. But she smiled, because now she knew. And she was no longer the prey. She was just waiting for the snake to coil around his own neck. After Okello left Mirembe's home that day, she was no longer the same woman. The quiet, trusting wife had died. In her place stood a woman who saw everything but said nothing. She went back home, and when Tajiri opened the door, surprised to see her back so soon, she gave him a smile so warm, even he couldn't sense the storm hiding behind it. She didn't confront him. Not a word about Kendi, not a single question about the poison. Instead, she kissed his cheek and told him she had missed him. She cooked his favorite meals, ironed his clothes, ran his bath like a good wife. She even laughed at his dry jokes and massaged his shoulders at night. Tajiri thought she was falling deeper in love, but in truth, she was rising into something more dangerous than he could ever imagine. Behind that gentle face, Okello was working, quietly, carefully. She started by moving all the money in their joint account into a private one under her name. She didn't want to leave anything behind if things went wrong. Then she changed all her passwords, filed her property papers, and made copies of every important document. Every time Tajiri spoke to Kendi on the phone, she recorded him. She had installed a tiny recording device inside the flower vase in their bedroom, and when he left the house one afternoon, she climbed up and placed a tiny camera in the living room ceiling, just above the dinner table. She tested it. It worked. It recorded everything. And still, she smiled, still loved him like nothing had changed. Because she was waiting, she needed him to show his true face, to think he was winning. Then came the anniversary, the candles, the dinner, the poisoned glass. He thought he was clever, thought she was foolish, but Okello had planned everything, right down to the last second. She knew he would slip, and when he did, the whole world would see who he really was. Tajiri woke up to bright lights and the cold smell of antiseptic. His stomach was burning like fire. Tubes ran into his arms and machines beeped softly beside him. He blinked and saw nurses talking in low voices. A doctor stood over him, checking the chart. "You're lucky," the doctor said. "Your stomach lining is damaged, but we stabilized you just in time." Tajiri tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He forced out a whisper. My wife, she poisoned me." The nurse looked at him, then at the doctor. Both of them exchanged a glance. Not surprise, but something colder. Doubt. Later that evening, the police arrived. Tajiri repeated his story, voice shaking with anger. "She switched the glass. She planned it. It was her." The officers sat quietly, then slid a tablet across to him. "Sir, we have footage. From your own home." On the screen, he watched himself, clear as day, reaching into his pocket, pouring something into the wine glass, glancing around nervously. He looked like a guilty man, because he was one. No, she switched it after. "After this," he shouted. One officer raised an eyebrow. "So you admit you put something in the glass?" Tajiri fell silent. Just then, Okello walked into the room, dressed in a simple wrapper and headscarf, eyes full of tears. Her voice cracked as she spoke to the officers. "He tried to kill me," she whispered. "But God switched the cup." Her words spread like wildfire. Nurses whispered. One began to cry. The officers looked down, then gently asked her to step outside while they finished the report. Tajiri looked around the room, searching for someone to believe him, but there was no one left. The hunter had become the hunted, and the woman he tried to kill was now the woman everyone wanted to protect. After the hospital and the police embarrassment, Tajiri's world started to fall apart fast. He was sent home under investigation, but people had already started whispering. Neighbors avoided him. Friends stopped answering his calls. His business partners pulled out quietly, not wanting their names linked to a man who tried to poison his own wife. But Tajiri still had hope. One last lifeline. Kendi. Late one night, While sitting in the dark corner of their once beautiful living room, he called her. His hands were shaking, his voice cracked. "Kendi, I need you. Please, tell them you made it up. Say Akello's framing me. Please." For a few seconds there was silence on the other end. Then came her voice, cold, sharp, and full of disgust. "You need me now," she hissed. "You promised me everything, Tajiri. Her land, her money, her business. You said she'd be gone by now and we'd be rich. But what did I get? Nothing. Kendi, please." He tried to beg, but she cut him off. "You're a fool. You couldn't even poison one woman properly. And now you're useless. Broke. A walking scandal." Then she did the unthinkable. She leaked everything. Their texts, the voice notes, the photos, every dirty plan, every cruel message about Akello, every disgusting joke about her, not lasting long. She posted it online, and within hours, the entire town of Mwaga was on fire. Tajiri's name was everywhere, in group chats, news blogs, gossip pages. Videos of him pouring poison into the glass were now side by side with screenshots of Kendi's chats. He was no longer a man, he was a warning, a meme, a disgrace. People spat when they saw him in the street. Mothers pulled their children away. Men who used to shake his hand now crossed the road when they saw him. His business shut down. His bank accounts were frozen. Even his own family refused to speak for him. His mother called him once, not to offer support, but to ask him never to bring shame to their doorstep again. Meanwhile, Kendi had vanished, changed her number, deleted her accounts, moved away like smoke in the wind. Tajiri was left with nothing but the echo of her last words. "Now you're broke and useless." He tried to post online to defend himself, but no one believed him. The court of public opinion had already ruled. He was finished. The man who once walked proudly in suits and dark sunglasses was now just a face people mocked behind closed doors. A story mothers told their daughters. Be careful who you trust. Even your own husband can become your enemy. And Akello, she said nothing. She didn't have to. The world was speaking for her now. After everything came to light, the poisoning, the betrayal, the leaked messages, Akello didn't hide. She didn't run. Instead, she stood tall, quiet, graceful, strong. While the world dragged Tajiri's name through the mud, she moved in silence, carrying herself with the dignity of a woman who had been through fire and come out shining. Weeks later, news broke that Akello had opened something powerful, a healing center, right in the heart of Mwaga. It was called The Waiting Place, a quiet building painted in soft earth tones, filled with green plants, warm lights and gentle music. But it wasn't just a place. It was a home for women who had been broken by lies, by abuse, by betrayal. At first, it started small, just 5 women, then 10. Soon women from nearby towns began traveling to see her, to sit with her, to talk. Not because she promised miracles, but because she understood, because she had lived through it and survived. Journalists came too, curious about her story. Cameras followed her as she lit candles in the healing room or sat under the tree with women crying in her arms. She never acted like a victim, never spoke with bitterness, only truth, pure, calm truth. In one interview, a reporter asked, "How did you know not to react with anger?" Akello smiled gently and said, "Pain taught me to see and to wait. Not all battles are won with fists. Some are won with silence, with patience, and with truth." Her words went viral. Clips of her interview were shared across social media. Women across Africa posted photos with the caption number, "I am Akello." She became a symbol, not of revenge, but of strength through stillness. In radio interviews, they called her the Quiet Flame. In women's magazines, she was named one of the voices of the new Africa. But Akello didn't chase the spotlight. She continued doing what mattered, holding broken women, helping them find their feet, reminding them they were not alone. Every morning, she lit incense and whispered prayers for those who couldn't speak yet. Every night, she walked barefoot through the healing center, making sure each woman had what she needed. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She just was. And somehow, that was louder than anything. People who once pitied her now admired her. Girls looked up to her. Mothers thanked her. Even those who had doubted her now watched from afar, silently learning from the grace with which she had turned her pain into purpose. Akello had been betrayed, almost killed, but she rose. Not for revenge, but to build something greater, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been broken. and told to stay silent. Now, she was no longer just Okello. She was a movement. Tajiri had lost everything. His money, his business, his friends, even his own family had cut him off. No one wanted to be seen with a man who had tried to kill his wife for wealth. Day after day, he wandered the streets of Mwaga, dirty and tired, sleeping in old sheds and behind closed shops. Whispers followed him everywhere. Children pointed. Adults looked away. But what haunted him most wasn't the public shame. It was Okello's silence. She never once spoke badly about him, never posted anything online, never even mentioned his name again. That silence tore at him more than any insult could. Then, one night, in the middle of the darkness, something in Tajiri snapped. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was madness, maybe it was pride still burning in the corners of his broken heart. He made his way to Okello's home, the quiet compound near the edge of town where she now lived, and ran her healing center. The walls were high, but he knew a way through the side fence. He moved like a shadow, slipping past the trees, his heart pounding. He reached a window, pried it open with shaking hands, and climbed inside. The house was still. Soft lights glowed in the hallway. The scent of lavender and herbs hung in the air. It felt peaceful, too peaceful. He tiptoed into the living room, hoping to find money, documents, anything he could use. But before he could take another step, he heard her voice. "I wondered when you'd come." He turned sharply. Okello was sitting on the couch in a white robe, calm as ever. A small lamp glowed beside her. She wasn't scared. She wasn't even surprised. "Sit," she said softly, pointing to a chair across from her. "Let's not pretend, Tajiri. It's over." Tajiri stood frozen, unsure what to do. His lips trembled, but no words came. Without another word, Okello picked up a remote and pressed play on the TV. There it was, the video, clear and sharp. Tajiri standing in the kitchen, slipping poison into a glass, looking over his shoulder. The same video that ruined him, now playing on a loop in front of his own eyes. He dropped to his knees. Okello looked at him, not with anger, but with something colder, disappointment. "You came to finish what you started?" she asked. "Or just to see if I was still scared?" Tajiri shook his head, tears forming in his eyes. She stood slowly, walked to the window, and opened the curtain. Red and blue lights flashed outside. "The police will be here in 5 minutes," she said quietly. "You should go meet them before they come in." Tajiri didn't move. He just sat there, broken, empty, defeated. And Okello, she turned and walked away, her voice floating back over her shoulder. "You tried to kill me, Tajiri, but I didn't have to lift a hand. You destroyed yourself." The courtroom was packed, every seat filled. People stood in the aisles, peeking through doors and windows, trying to catch a glimpse. Mwaga hadn't seen a case like this in years. A husband accused of trying to poison his own wife, and the wife who had calmly, quietly outsmarted him. Okello sat at the front, dressed simply in a navy blue dress, her headscarf tied neatly, hands folded in her lap. She looked peaceful, almost too calm for someone facing the man who had tried to end her life. But that was Okello, steady as a mountain, not a tear, not a flinch. Tajiri, on the other hand, looked like a shadow of the man he used to be, unshaved, pale, eyes dark with sleepless nights. His suit hung loosely on his thinner frame. He kept glancing around nervously, as if hoping someone, anyone, would believe him. The prosecutor played the video again, the footage from the night of the poisoning. The entire room fell silent as they watched Tajiri pour the liquid into the wineglass, glance around, then set it back on the table. It was undeniable. Next came the messages, printed screenshots of his chats with Kendi. The courtroom gasped as the words were read out loud. Every plan, every lie, every insult toward Okello. Tajiri's lawyer tried to argue that Okello had set him up, that she'd switched the glasses on purpose, that this was all a trap. Finally, the judge looked directly at Tajiri. "Mr. Tajiri," he said, his voice firm, "you're saying your wife switched the cups?" "Yes," Tajiri shouted, desperate. "She knew. She did it to trap me." The judge leaned forward slightly. "So, you admit there was poison in one of the glasses, placed by you?" Tajiri froze. Silence. His mouth opened, then closed. The words refused to come out. The judge nodded slowly. "Then that means you confess. You admit to the act, even if you claim it didn't go as planned." The room stayed silent. One by one, heads turned to look at Okello. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just kept looking ahead, calm as ever. The judge picked up his pen and spoke the final words. Guilty. Attempted murder. Sentencing will follow. Gasps filled the room. Some people clapped softly. Others just looked stunned. But Okello stood quietly and walked out, untouched by the noise. Tajiri slumped in his seat, defeated. His own words had buried him. What he thought was a clever defense had only confirmed his guilt. He looked around, but no one looked back. And as Okello stepped out into the sunlight, the crowd outside parted. Some women reached for her hand. Others wiped away tears. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Truth had already spoken for her. Tajiri stood in court, silent as the judge read out his sentence. 25 years in prison for attempted murder. There was no reaction from him, no outburst, just a blank stare, as if he had already left his own body. The courtroom emptied slowly, but Okello stayed seated for a few seconds longer. She took a quiet breath, then stood and walked out with the same calm strength she had carried from the beginning. A few days later, Okello returned to Nyonko village, where everything had first begun. She wore a simple dress and carried a basket of fruits for Mirembe. The old woman was sitting beneath the mango tree, grinding herbs with slow, steady hands. When she saw Okello, she smiled knowingly. Okello sat beside her and placed the basket down. "It's over," she said softly. "Justice didn't need blood, just truth." Mirembe nodded, her wise eyes filled with quiet pride. "And you let truth do the work." As Okello walked back through the village, children ran to her side, waving and calling her name. Women smiled at her, not just in greeting, but in respect, the kind that's earned through fire. Somewhere in a cold prison cell, Tajiri sat alone, surrounded by walls he had built for himself, the hunter, now the trapped. And as the sun warmed Okello's skin and the wind danced through her scarf, the voice of the storyteller whispered, "He thought he was the hunter, but she let him build his own trap. Some women don't cry, they wait, then they rise."